All right, so the disease that I chose for my microbiology presentation is the Nipah virus. So just a little bit of background, the Nipah virus is part of the genus Henipavirus. So here is the classification all the way from the kingdom down to the specific species of Henipavirus that I'm going to be talking about, the Nipah virus. All viruses in the genus are non-segmented RNA viruses. They are zoonotic viruses, so they are able to be transferred between different kinds of animals. And these viruses are typically found in different species of bats. They don't cause disease in these bats, that's just where they kind of originate from. Henipaviruses are characterized by long genomes and their ability to reproduce in many different types of hosts. That goes back to them being zoonotic viruses. The Henipaviruses are pleomorphic, so they kind of range in size from 50 to 150 nanometers. Here is a diagram of a Henipavirus along with part of the genome. So in the Henipavirus, the G proteins that are shown in blue on the outside attach to the host cell, and the F proteins, which are shown in like red and yellow, are what fuse the virus membrane to the host cell's membrane, and then the RNA is able to enter the cell that way. So the pathology of the Nipah virus, it infects epithelial cells and causes blood vessel inflammation that in turn causes thrombosis. It also causes inflammation in parts of the lungs that's less common than the blood vessel inflammation. For the Nipah virus, the inflammation especially affects the nervous system where the blood vessels are small. Here's a picture of the Nipah virus in some cells. So signs and symptoms of the Nipah virus, the incubation period for this disease ranges anywhere from 4 to 14 days. That is the amount of time it takes from when a person gets infected with the disease until they start showing signs. 4 to 14 is the typical amount of days. It has also been known to be all the way up to 45 days, but that is much more uncommon. When a human is infected with the Nipah virus, they can range anywhere from being asymptomatic to having a respiratory infection to having encephalitis, which is swelling in the brain. Symptoms for the Nipah virus include fever, headaches, muscle pain, vomiting, and sore throat. Those are kind of the earlier symptoms. That is then followed by dizziness, drowsiness, altered consciousness, and neurological signs that indicate encephalitis. That the dizziness, drowsiness, and everything past that is part of the swelling that occurs in the brain. The disease can lead to a coma anywhere within 24 to 48 hours, so that's a pretty rapid change. Of the people who get the disease and experience encephalitis, approximately 20% that recover are left with neurological consequences like personality changes and seizures. That affects them throughout the rest of their lives, not just for a short time afterwards. The Nipah virus is highly deadly with a fatality rate of 40 to 70%. That is a high range and an actually quite large range. That's due to differences in medical care and just environmental factors that affect the virus. So the disease can be transmitted in typically 3 different ways. Like I said, the infection probably started with a bat, and the bat then transferred the disease to a pig, and the virus mutated in the pig and was able to transfer to humans. The transmission to humans can come through direct contact with infected bats. It can happen with bat excretions that contaminate raw date palm sap that humans ingest. Humans can also contract the disease from contact with infected pigs. This is responsible for the larger outbreaks that have occurred in Malaysia and Singapore. The third way that the disease is transmitted is through contact with other infected humans. So this is responsible for some of the outbreaks that have happened in India and Bangladesh. These are in smaller numbers. Because this disease is kind of far and few between, it's not a very common disease, it's still unknown if once a person is infected and recovered, if they have immunity. So here's a map of the Nipah virus distribution. This blue line is the native home range of the bat that carries the Nipah virus. The blue areas are places that have had outbreaks of Nipah virus and Hendra virus. Both are in the same genus. The red areas are Hendra virus outbreaks, and the blue areas are the Nipah virus outbreaks. So here we have the Malaysia and Singapore outbreaks and the Bangladesh and India outbreaks. So the history of the Nipah virus. The first isolated incident of Nipah virus was in 1999 in the Malaysian village of Sungai Nipah. That's where it got its name from, Nipah virus. When the disease first came through, they originally thought that it was Japanese encephalitis. There were some problems with this because Japanese encephalitis typically affects children, and the people that were getting sick in this village were mostly adults. There's also some problems because in Japanese encephalitis, the pigs are not affected by the virus, but in Malaysia, the pigs were also getting sick. To a lesser extent, there were less deaths among the pigs, but they were still experiencing some of the same symptoms. In this first incident, there were 260 reported human cases of Nipah virus and 105 deaths. Again, that's a very high mortality rate. In efforts to try and stop the virus, nearly 1 million pigs were slaughtered in Malaysia, and pigs that had been sent from Malaysia to Singapore were also culled. They also found success in stopping the virus by cutting down trees where bats were nesting that were above pig farms. That helped with less contact from bats to pigs. After that 1999 outbreak, there was another outbreak in India and Bangladesh. It was much smaller, not anywhere near the 265 cases in Malaysia. Since 2001, there have been nearly yearly outbreaks of the Nipah virus in Bangladesh, mostly small outbreaks though, so anywhere ranging from like 10 to 50 reported cases of the Nipah virus. The most recent outbreak was in Kerala, India in 2018 with 17 deaths. So the treatment, there is no cure or vaccine for the Nipah virus. Treatment is pretty much limited to supportive care for the symptoms. So it is, again, because the virus is kind of few and far between, it is unknown how long a person is able to transmit the virus after they've been infected and recovered. So there have been some treatments for the symptoms of the virus. It helps if these treatments are done early with antiviral drugs. That can reduce some of the fever and the severity that happens with the disease. So again, because there's no treatment or vaccine, the best way to not get Nipah virus is just prevention. It can be prevented by avoiding contact with diseased animals and like pigs and bats. The CDC has said that a subunit vaccine using Hendra G proteins produces cross-protective antibodies against HENV and NIPV, and has been recently used in Australia to protect horses against the Hendra virus. This vaccine offers great potential for Nipah virus protection in humans as well. So there have been efforts made to find a vaccine. We're well on the way to starting. So the best way to prevent the Nipah virus is to avoid consuming raw date palm sap. The date palm sap may have been partially eaten by bats or contaminated by bat excrements. The other best way to prevent Nipah virus is to wash your hands regularly. That's the same with any type of disease. Washing your hands is one of the best ways to prevent. For people who are in contact with Nipah virus, the best way to avoid contracting the disease is to cover your mouth and nose, to wash your hands afterwards, and to follow any healthcare worker or any instructions given by professional healthcare workers or the World Health Organization. So that is the Nipah virus. Thank you.